future doesn't have to be like that. If you step on in to the secret kindergarten, showing you that your young children hold the key to understanding the universe, understanding the self, and therefore they hold the key to human freedom. Your child is the gatekeeper. Only you can open the gate, and the secret kindergarten is going to show you how.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Secret Kindergarten, Grown Ups Edition. And my name's Gino, as in G. No. And I'm here with my very special guest today. Her name is Theresa Martz, and she is the author of this amazing book that I will honestly tell you changed Julia's life and my life, Julia, my partner. And it's called Organic Gardening, Cutting Through the Hype to the 3 Keys of Successful Gardening. Thank you so much for coming on, Theresa. It's really special that you wanted to join me here for this chat. I'm super excited, and I've got so many questions linking it to, this sort of family dynamic and the young kids and all that sort of thing. But hello and welcome.
Thank you so much, Gino. I am just absolutely thrilled and honored to be here. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I've been looking forward to it.
Oh, you're welcome. This is going to be the first of many. I'm warning you.
That's okay. That's okay.
And I will just quickly say that, try to be quick. Julia's organic gardening journey. I'm a bit of a lazy boy. I'm not so much in the garden. But Julia's organic journey is, we discovered, sharing that with Julia, it's been a long-term rabbit hole with lots of conflicting opinions, lots of conflicting ideas. And we were just very blessed and lucky to come across your information. And I will say, it really changed our life. It changed our relationship with our land, which is really our little mini world, our little chunk of nature. And that's it, really. The magic, I think that us discovering the book and the garden starting to flourish and the relationship with the garden starting to grow and be more sort of harmonic, it really sort of became a big part of, our lives and our own growth and our journey of, in a way our spiritual journey in the things we do and the things we achieve in our lives. And the garden's kind of really feels like a part of that. And it reminds me of when I was a young child myself, in the summertime, playing in the garden, this sort of very natural connection. And that's why we've got you here today, because I'm sure you've got a lot of stories. I don't know which one to start with. Let's just start with the bees, because I know you have a special relationship with bees. But if you like, would you just like to? Because I'm talking too much and you're the guest. Tell us a little bit about yourself and sort of, how this book came about and that sort of thing.
Well, that's a good place to start. Most of the things that are promoted out there and most of the instructions that anybody sees online. Now, this isn't 100% across the board, because you can't say anything is 100% across the board, but it's pretty much the majority. It all has to do with making money. And one of the reasons that I know that well is not only because I've investigated that when I started to garden, but because I have taken a lot of classes on, before I started my website, and the classes were along the lines of how to make money online. Well, I never wanted to do anything that they said to do, because it basically involves copying stuff, making money, promoting what sells, and they really don't really have any substance to it, real substance. And when it comes right down to it, Mother Nature will teach you how to garden if you follow her lead. And a lot of people don't. They feel that they have to use all these chemicals and they have to use this and they have to use that. Really, you don't. When I started gardening, Bill and I started because we wanted something to eat. I mean, our garden wasn't for a hobby. It was because we were hungry. So that's how we started. And fortunately, Organic Gardening Magazine was really wonderful at that time. Now, that's been many years ago. We're talking 45 years or so. Well, now it's gone to pot, it's not the same at all. But back then it was real nitty gritty stuff, and it was really wonderful. And that was sort of the only source I had because the internet wasn't around. Well, even at that, I believed a lot of things that they said. And I must have, to a certain extent, I went along with the group thinking you had to do this and you had to do that. And I found out in a hurry you didn't have to do any of that. And one of the reasons I found that out is because I couldn't afford to buy anything. So I found out you didn't need it. But the thing is, if you work with nature, that's really all you need. And if you follow her lead, and that includes, I'll tell you about the bees in a minute, but that is really so important. So, I felt as I got, let's see, the book came out in, I can't even remember when the book, it's been out, I guess about 12 years. But in any event, the reason I wrote it is because I wanted to put something out there that had truth in it, real truth, based on my experience, not based on what I read, not based on what somebody else said, not based on what everybody does and adding chemicals and this, that, and the other, but based on my experience and things that I knew worked. Well, I have people, and I'm very honored by this, people all over the world write to me and say, we never knew gardening could be so easy. And I have people, now I'm 80 plus, but I have people in their 90s write to me and say, I wouldn't be gardening if it weren't for you. I didn't know about all these easy ways on how to do things, but I'm an expert at easy ways because I didn't always have money or means to do it. So I had to find out what was the easiest way, what was doable. After Bill died, Bill's been dead 8 years, which seems like 8 minutes to me, but when he died, there were a lot of things that he did that I couldn't do, that I had to find an easy way for. And there's always a way, but you have to look for it and you have to be open to it. So that's basically why I wrote the book. It's very simple. It doesn't elaborate. It deals with the core of successful gardening. In other words, if you're just starting a garden and you didn't read any other thing, now there's always more to learn. We're never going to learn everything there is to know. We're never going to do that because there's too much. When God created it, he did all those little tiny details and all the intricacies that are so wonderful and so magnificent. We don't have to know any of that. And it's so wonderful. We don't have to know anything but all the easy stuff. So if somebody starts with just the basics of my books, they're going to be successful because it's simple. It's very, very easy. It's so easy. So anyway, you want me to get to the bees now? Or do you have anything to say about that?
No, if you're ready. No, it's fantastic. If you want to expand a little on the garden, you can. I don't know if that's opening up the whole book for you or.
Well, no, that's okay. Do you, when you say expand on the garden, you want me to talk more about the book and what's in the book? Okay. Yeah. There are only 3 keys to success. These are the basics, okay? The way you prepare the soil. And when I talk in the book, I talk about how to prepare it in the best way, and then I give you options. Because not everybody is able to dig, okay? So if you're not able to dig, there's another way. It's not going to work as quickly, and it's not going to work as well, but it will work over time. And you know what that option is, to enlist nature's aid. Now, nature works a little bit slower. The double digging works faster as far as for, quicker success. But it's still, I've prepared many a bed with nature, and it does work, and it works very, very well. So I give you that option. So soil preparation is really important. You always need to cover your soil. The conventional way is all this bare soil. Well, that's just horrible. All your organic materials in the soil totally, oxidize, and they're not there anymore. Not to mention that the soil runs off and so forth and so on. So it's very important to cover your soil, and not with plastic. I mean, that is the biggest, that's all about the money. That doesn't have anything to do with working with nature, believe me. And then I lost my train of thought here. Okay, and then adding or constantly refurbishing your soil. In other words, you can't, the farmers nowadays, they think they don't have to put anything but chemicals in the soil. And, before the chemical companies got so powerful, and they've got the money to promote. So before they started promoting, for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years, farmers used their organic residues from the crops to replenish their soils. They didn't have anything about fertilizers and all, and they were very successful, and they kept the soil replenished. And when you use your residues, and even when you cover your soil, like with pine or with straw or any kind of organic material like that, that too replenishes your soil. So as long as you do that, those are your basic core things that are going to make you successful. Now, there are lots of other things you can do and lots of other things you can add, but that's your core. And you got to have those. And they're so simple. They are just so simple. And there are lots. I tell people, principles you can't break. The universe has certain principles in play. If you break those, you do those at your own risk, because you're not going to be successful. As far as ways to accomplish them, millions of ways. Everybody might have a different way. As long as you are sticking to the principle, you're okay. The way you do it, you've got a little bit of choice, a whole lot of choice. Okay.
Amazing. One thing I noticed, it does bring up a question, but I'll try not to ask that question, but I will say, I'll make a comment that, in some of the centers where I worked, I try to always bring this back to the kids, the young children. Some of the centers that would have a garden or some soil, one thing I noticed that they would do if you left them in a way to free rein, they would definitely dig and manipulate the soil. They'd go to that, and they'd also take out what they find, stones and rocks and stuff like that, and take them out. And that reminds me a little bit of the way in your book you recommend to treat the soil, because the farmers, they're poisoning the soil. And I do hear a lot of organic farmers that they're, in a way, over-respectful of the soil. You mustn't touch the soil. It's the earth. You don't want to hurt the planet kind of thing by digging. I'm not saying they're not really digging, but there's a sort of no-dig ideology, like don't damage the earth. And then the farmers are there poisoning, and you leave the young kids to it, and they're there. It's almost as if the soil was meant to be manipulated, or wants to be manipulated, wants to be conditioned and cleaned out.
May I jump in here on something?
Yes, that's where I'm.
Okay.
I'll get better at this one day.
Oh no, you're fine. You're fine. I just want to clarify this. I know what you're saying, and kids will dig. And in prepare, I'm really glad you brought this up, because this will clarify what I'm saying. Because what I just said, a lot of people could understand to mean that you have to do this all the time. Once you prepare the soil, you never have to do it again, and you don't have to dig. I can go out and dig potatoes with my hands. When I get ready to plant, all I have to do is pull the straw back, or the pine, or whatever it is I have for a covering, and plant. I don't have. Somebody asked me just here lately. They said, "Do you till? Who tills this for you?" And I said, "I don't ever till." And the less you disturb your soil, the better off you are. Now, this sort of goes against what you're saying. I'm not saying the soil won't recover. Obviously, it will. If you double dig, it stands to reason, it doesn't take a genius to figure out it's going to recover, and it will. But what you want to do, this is where you get to the little fine things that give you that little extra edge. And one of the extra edge that you can easily obtain is, don't disturb the soil any more than you have to. Now, that doesn't mean if you have a child in your garden and he goes out and he's playing in the soil. Okay, the soil's going to live. But the point is the soil life, millions and millions of different kinds of soil life are in the soil. And when you dig, and especially when you till, you kill them all. If somebody tills, they are going to kill a quarter of all the soil life right off the bat until it refurbishes itself. So it's little things like that that give you an edge. If you know that, don't disturb it any more than you have to. Now, there are times that I absolutely have to disturb the soil. Like if I'm digging up to set a trap for a vole, well, obviously I'm disturbing the soil. Well, you have to use common sense with all this. You can't be ridiculous about it. But the point is, the less you disturb the soil, the better off you are, and the better your plants are going to like it. Because all those soil organisms, that's what, all the good stuff that you've put in the soil with the organic materials that you are refurbishing the soil with, all that feeds the soil life. The soil life feeds your plants. It's the soil life. They take all those nutrients and literally take them to the plant and feed the plant. Now, that's not covered in my book, because all I've covered in the book is the real simple stuff. But on tending my garden, I've covered a lot of stuff. And what I just told you, I've covered too. I've covered. So technically, when you say, I know it's in Kids to Dig, and I have a great story with the kids that I'll tell you, at some point in our talk, that involves just that. It shows you what he did and how he dug it. I mean, it's okay. The soil will recover. But the point is, we as adults, and if we want to get that extra edge, that little bit of extra, and every time, it's sort of like getting a percent better every day over a period of time. You've got a big accomplishment, and you're a lot better off than you were. And that's what people say. They say, well, gee, that won't make any difference, and I've been doing this for a long time. Well, if that's their attitude, they need not come to me, because I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. I just tell them what I know and what I've done and what I've learned. If they want to take advantage of it, they can, and they will see results. And that's what is so rewarding when all these people write to me and say, wow, I had no idea. I mean, there are so many people that almost gave up gardening, and then they found my easy, simple ways, and they are just amazed at the difference. And they've doubled their production in the garden, even with all the bad stuff. We've got chemtrails that are poison. All that stuff comes down. It's all horrible for your crops. I see a tremendous difference in my garden, in a decline. But in spite of that, I'm still getting tons of stuff. But I see a decline because of the chemtrails. It's not that they're all trying to poison us, with all the chemicals sprayed from the air, all the chemicals in the food, all the chemicals they're telling people to put on their soils. And there are people who spray glyphosate or, Roundup, and they call themselves organic gardening, but, they don't realize the harm they're doing. They have no idea. So anyway, in my opinion, you certainly need every edge that you can get. With everything they're trying to do, you need this edge. You need every little bit of help that you can get, and especially things that are so simple. Why not do them? I'm going to shut up now.
No. I want to hear more. And
okay.
Yeah.
We're going to get back to the bees then. You want to do the bees?
Yes, I'll just quickly say that I feel like some of my connection with, universal spirit, God, nature, just that connectedness, and, in a way, messages, symbols, communications, encouragements and pats on the back that were coming from elsewhere, I noticed really started to come about not only when I was doing my best for the young kids when I decided to get into teaching, but also this sort of interaction with their connection with nature and getting in that connection in it. And I later discovered this sort of, well, it's more than a concept, but in a book, Rudolf Steiner, this sort of concept that has been now termed as a sort of eco-spirituality, where the family or the children and the adults and the garden or in nature all interacting with one another creates a spiritual environment, a spiritual sort of nourishment, or in a way like just a big sort of magnet for this knowing and this connecting. And some of our conversations have, I've heard some of this sort of stuff, not directly to quote Steiner, but just, I believe you've experienced a lot of this stuff from your time flourishing in the garden and making other people's gardens flourish too. And yeah, you might have a story about the bees.
Oh, I've got so many. Bees are wonderful. And I have to start out with saying, I've always been amazed by nature, the earth, the garden. It's always been part of me. I might get it from my grandmother because she was very much into that. And I appreciate that so much. But everything vibrates at a frequency, as you know. And if we can have our frequency to go along with nature's frequency, there are so many wonderful things that can take place that you never thought possible. And some of it is with the bees. At one time, when I first started gardening, the poisons weren't they were bad, but they weren't as bad as they are now. So there's been a constant decline over the years. But nonetheless, one of the things, I love my bees, and I talk to them and I see them and I get worried about them it's like when my blueberries come into bloom. I just hate it when I'll say, oh, you're all by yourself. Where are your friends? There's no one to help you. And I see this one little bee trying to do this whole blueberry bush, where at one time it was literally covered with bees, And one of the things too, the gardener's relationship with the bees can teach children. You don't have to say a word. Not a word to teach. All you have to do is what you do. The kids learn from what you are, who you are, what you do. Your frequency, even though you don't realize it, that is all relays to the kids. So they're going to learn from you, whether you want them to learn or not. So, it's very helpful if you can keep a real good attitude and a good frequency. Well, when kids would visit my garden, which my neighbor kids, they were like my own kids, I knew their mother when I was a girl. And Robin and Timothy were they were like my own kids. And they always wanted to be at my house. They like that, So they would come over, and Timothy was a preemie, and you could hold him in the palm of your hand when he was born. And the minute he could toddle, he was in my garden, and he loved it. He loved it. And Robin, his sister, did too. Well, he was pulling up my onions when he was in diapers. And I never forget this one big onion that he pulled up, and he fell backwards, but he had all that padding on, But anyway, there were bees everywhere. And I taught the kids by my actions not to be afraid of the bees. And one time there were flowers everywhere, and vegetables everywhere. And I was talking to the kids, and I backed up, and this tiny little bee stung me right on the butt. Well, the kids thought that was the greatest thing that they had ever seen in their whole life, But the point is, they weren't afraid of the bees, because I went, ow! They just thought that was grand. But here's a great story about the bees. The wasps are wonderful, and people are so afraid of wasps. If you mind your business, you don't really have to be afraid, because they have a purpose, and they're very busy in going about the purpose that God intended them to go about. So when I'm in my garden, one of the things that I really enjoy with the wasps is watching what they do. I've seen them catch a bug that is a bad bug, and I've seen them haul it out of the garden. I mean, really, for real. I've watched them and followed them. And then when I have my cabbage, they patrol my cabbage. They patrol it every day. And they'll circle around and around the cabbage, and they'll look under every leaf. They're looking for, eggs or whatever it is they eat, But it is absolutely amazing. And this has been, let's see, I guess it was 2017. I think the reason I remember that is because I broke my leg in 2018, and I think this was the year before. And I had neglected my side border. And so I was out there doing some things in that. And all of a sudden, all these wasps flew up. And one of them touched me right here. And then it's like he stopped, and all of them stopped, literally. And it was almost like they said, "Oh, Theresa, we didn't know it was you." It really, I mean, they could have really done a number on me, but they didn't. It was like they really did know who I was. And they knew that I was there not to harm them, that I just made a mistake. And I didn't realize that they had gotten in there and had built a nest, But it was so funny to see them all stop, like, "Oh, Theresa, we didn't know that was you," So it's so wonderful to have all these little creatures like this. And there are a lot of creatures missing from my garden with all this spraying going on and all. I have a lot of creatures missing, but it's a wonderful thing. And when I think it's really important to be an example to kids. I mean, I know there are some people who are allergic to bee stings, and that's sort of the exception to the rule, But the point is, you don't want to be afraid, because they really won't hurt you if you leave them alone. I get right up close and personal with my bees, I'm always, and it's all I can do to keep from touching them, It's just, I mean, I really do want to touch them, but I don't. So anyway, I have fun with my bees. All right, that's my bee story. I have a lot more, but that's one of them.
One more. Come on. I love these bee stories.
Well, let's see. Well, I'm now this, and I'm ashamed to say this. All right. Do you know what I think they're Japanese hornets. I think that's what they're called, but they're hornets. They're real big. Are you familiar with those?
I've read about, I don't know, but I've read that, that's the thing that everybody's was terrified of a year or two ago.
Yeah. Well, I have a fig bush, and these hornets love the figs. When they get, a lot of times, if I don't cut it down low enough, the figs, they grow up too tall, and then the figs, I can't reach them, if they're too high up. So the hornets, as they rot, the hornets get up there and get all that and collect it, and I don't know what they do with it, but they're very busy with it anyway. And I was afraid at first. I was really afraid of them. I'm not afraid of most of my bees, but I was afraid of these hornets, and I think a lot of it is programming. But I guess the programming worked on me, because I was afraid of them. And I didn't want to get stung by one of those things. I really didn't. So I feel really embarrassed to tell you this story, but I'm going to tell it anyway to make a point. It was last year. Yeah, it was last year. I killed one. And then I felt, I don't want to be stupid, or ridiculous, but I felt bad about it, because after that, there was another one that came down to its aid, and I came right up on it, and it was not aggressive at all. And so then I started saying to myself, maybe you had this all wrong, maybe they're not like you thought they were. Maybe if they're just minding their business and doing what they do. And I don't think you really have the reason that you thought you had to be so afraid. So now I mean, I wouldn't go up and touch one. Now, I'm not going to be dumb about it. But on the other hand, I don't mind getting closer to them than I did. And I'm not afraid of them anymore because they are really not aggressive. And that shocked me. That really shocked me to find out that they are not aggressive, because I really thought they were. And I guess I don't remember any brainwashing on it, so to speak, but I'm sure it must have happened because I was really afraid of them. But I don't think I had reason to be, based on what I've seen since then. So now when I see them, I mean, I'm not going to go up and pat them or anything like that, you know, but I can get pretty close to them, and I'm not afraid of them. And I know that they'll mind their business and I'll mind mine. So that's my other B story.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
And that's important, right?
Yeah, it is.
There's obviously a middle path of being, you know, a bit aware, but also, most importantly, the important thing is that not to be afraid, because that's the context of the world we live in. I mean, you know, sharks at the beach, the bees are going to sting you, the wasps are going to sting you, the spider's going to bite you, all these things. And you know, I meet South African people that live in New Zealand, and the thing they miss about Africa is the bush. And when they say that, I think that's the last place I want to be, just from the conditioning, right? Lions, tigers, the deadliest snakes, the deadliest everything. Why would you go to the bush? And it's the one place they miss. They really deeply miss being in nature. And they're in what I was always led to believe is the most dangerous natural place on the planet. So it is about a balance, and it's nature being a teacher, and the parent or the adult guardian being the steward, and the garden being that environmental kind of glue that glues the whole dynamic together. Something like that anyway.
I think that, you know, if we can keep I don't know what to call it, our mindset, our frequency, I guess there are lots of ways that you could term it, but if we can keep in balance, you know, it's like you said, be aware. You don't want to be stupid about anything, but on the other hand, you don't want to go from one extreme to the other. If we are calm in any situation, no matter how dangerous it is, we've got a lot better chance of coming out of it, you know, for the better. It's when that fear causes our frequency to be such that it favors an unfavorable result rather than a favorable result, if you follow me on that. And that's what I found. And sometimes that's hard, you know, it's really hard. Like, for instance, well, you know, when we lived at the other place that we lived, there were just loads and loads and loads of snakes there. And this is when we first started gardening there, and I didn't want to kill them. I didn't want to kill any snake, okay? Well, now see, that's one extreme to the other. You know, I mean, you have to use wise judgment. And I don't know that I did. But in any event, the first incident was in the strawberry patch, and there was a snake there, and he would not leave. I mean, I told him, now you got to leave. You know, I don't want you here because I don't want to come up on you and get bitten, you know, because if you put your hand down there, you know, he's going to bite you. I mean, he wouldn't, if you didn't see him, you could get bitten. Well, anyway, he was waiting for birds in this cedar tree is what he was waiting for. That's exactly what he's waiting for, baby birds. And that's where he was going to. But I moved him. He came back, and I moved him, and he came back. I said, now listen, I don't want you back here. Well, he came back, and I moved him again, and finally got, you know, ended that. But the snakes were just so, I don't know, call them tame. I would be down on my hands and knees working in a border. And this snake, this big black snake, would come by, and he was like so unafraid that he would almost like tip his hat to me. I mean, if he could have, he would have, you know, I mean, it was like, oh, hi, Theresa, how are you? And then he would go about his business. Well, that went on for a while. But then Samuel, who was our black lab, and I came out of the house one time, and there was a snake. We didn't know it before this, but we knew it once we saw this. There was a snake that lived under the breezeway. You know, the old houses had the kitchen was connected to the house by a breezeway. Well, anyway, the snake that's where he was living. And Samuel, who would follow my lead, he couldn't believe it either. And he just looked at the snake, and the snake looked at us. And I thought, oh my goodness, I really don't want to kill him. All right. So we went on and on like this with all these incidents with snakes. But I'll tell you what broke the straw on the camel's back. One morning, Bill got up and opened the door, and there were 3 snakes between the screen door and the door. That finished me. That said, Theresa, it's time to kill some snakes. I mean, that's a little bit too chummy for me, So, I mean, Bill couldn't believe it when he opened the door. He just could hardly believe it. So anyway, then I had an agreement with him. There was one huge snake, and I didn't have any intention of killing him. He was just too gigantic. He'd been around for years and years and years and years. And he used to wrap himself around a cedar tree up front. And I would talk to him, and I would say, now listen, we're going to have an agreement here. You stay out here and mind your business. And don't you come back to my stuff. You stay right out there. Well, he did. He always did. But I started killing some of the smaller ones because it just got to be too much. And then at this place, when they come up close to the house, they're not welcome. They're not welcome. If they get in my garden, they're trespassing. I've got no trespassing sign. And, I mean, I can move them. And if I don't have any, I tell them, if I see them outside the garden, I speak to them and let them go. But if they're up by the house, they're going to die. And if they get in my garden and I think they're a danger to me, they're going to die. But if I don't have any tool with me to accomplish that mission, I'll take something, a tomato steak or something, and I'll pick them up with that and move them out. Black snakes are wonderful to have around. I mean, you don't want to kill but so many. But then there's a balance. I don't want hundreds of snakes in my yard. I just don't want that. But they're wonderful because they will keep the poisonous snakes away. They're very territorial. So they will keep the poisonous snakes away. And I'd much rather have a black snake than a copperhead. Black snakes are just, the only time black snakes are even aggressive is if they're mating. Then they're aggressive. But other than that, they're not. So it's like, you're just killing something that really can't defend itself against you, really. So it's like you were saying before, it's a balance. It's a balance. How did we get onto snakes? I don't know. Anyway, what were we talking about?
No, we're talking about the garden, and it ends up going to really like natural law or just our rights, our innate rights. Living in the garden, like living the garden life, doing all the gardening stuff, it highlights these issues and these rules or these rights that we have, right, to property and to our own right to defending ourselves or our home or our livelihood, our property. And I guess you learn where that line in the sand is in a natural way, right? You don't want to just go out with the machine gun shooting every living creature you can find. I think you learn about that balance and maintaining that balance.
I think that you've really hit on it because I think it's a balance. I don't think, I had one lady one time, I was telling people how to deal with voles in the garden and stuff like that when they get into your stuff. Now, many times, like this year, I hardly trapped any at all. And I did have a tiny bit of damage, but not that much. But if something starts where I'm not getting food because they're taking it, well, then I'm going to trap and kill them. But anyway, this lady wrote and said, oh, well, I'm not going to read your stuff anymore because you kill little animals. Well, that's just being unrealistic. I I don't want to kill anything if I don't have to. But there are times that for the balance of everything, nature is not maintaining a balance, because here we are as humans, we sort of interfere with that balance. So you got to do something. I have a hawk. Now, I haven't seen him for a long time, a couple of years now. But before that, he would come every year and help me hunt those voles. It was wonderful. He would go on the other side of the garden, and he would sit there and watch for them. And it was wonderful. It's such an experience to see that. And then I have like little screech owls. Little screech owls are like this, and they make almost like a little crying noise. And it's just so wonderful. And then I was telling you about the great horned owl. Oh, they're huge. They're huge. They're so big. But all that stuff is wonderful. And there's a story on my site about, it's called, if somebody wants to look it up, my site is tendingmygarden.com. And all they have to do is do a search for an unlikely friendship. And that tells my story of, I had a little rabbit. It was just the most unbelievable story in the world. I don't want my yard filled with rabbits either. But this little guy, I found him. I was back in the back working by that fig bush I was telling you about. And I had a lot of straw back there. And evidently usually they'll have a lot of little kits, little baby rabbits. But he must have been the only one, because I saw him when he was little teeny, and he was the only one around. Well, he ran from me, and I didn't think much about it. And then he started growing, and then he started getting in my shed. He still wasn't very big, but he would dig, and he was for protection, but he would get it. Well, I didn't want him in there, so I'd block up everything. Well, then he grew and grew and grew. Well, what was really strange was he started making overtures towards me as a friend. And I couldn't hardly believe this. I really could not believe it. I was at the clothesline one day, and all of a sudden I heard this noise, which was a little bit unnerving because I knew it was an animal, and I turned around, and here he was. I mean, he came right up to me, and looked at me. And it was amazing. And so I started talking to him, and there began our friendship. And when I would go outside, he got so friendly that I would call him. I'd say, Bunny, come on, Bunny. And he loved to sneak up on me. He loved it when I was at the straw, getting straw. And then I would turn around, and there he'd be, and he'd sort of scare me because I didn't know he was there. It was the cutest little thing. And I've got pictures of him because I could get good pictures. I get right on top of him practically. And so there are pictures on my website of him. But here is the amazing part that is really, I just wonder what really happened, because I have a feeling it's a supernatural story. I don't know that it is. But here's what happened. One day I was out working on the side there, and Bunny came up. And Bunny came up. I thought it was a he. I thought the rabbit was a he. I never really investigated, but I thought it was a he. Well, anyway, Bunny came up with a mouthful of grass. And I knew right away that it wasn't a he then, because I knew that meant she was building a nest. Well, they're very secretive when they build a nest. They don't let people see them. They don't let anybody see them. That's been proven and studied. Well, anyway, she was building a nest right up beside the house and went right past me. She almost touched my leg. She went past it, went into the growth there, and was building this nest. Well, I'm thinking to myself, I really don't want a bunch of baby rabbits around. One rabbit is plenty. I don't want all these rabbits. And the next thing I knew, I looked every day, because I knew that it would just be a matter of days. Once they build a nest, it's only a matter of days before they have the little babies. So I looked every day and I didn't see it. Well, when that last time that she was there with her mouth full of grass and all, she heard something in my neighbor's yard. I guess she heard something because she stood up and looked at attention and she ran over there. Well, I don't like her to go over there because there are cats and things over there. And one of them is a very proficient killer. And I was afraid maybe that, he might do her harm. Well, she went over there and I said, Bunny, Bunny, and I called her. I didn't really want her to go. I just knew something was not right about her going. And I never saw her again. But it was the most beautiful friendship for the whole, it was such a friendship. It was so wonderful. And the whole that you were talking about, spiritual connection. There are so many opportunities in a garden over a period of time to develop a friendship like that. It doesn't have to be with the rabbit. It can be with almost anything. And the closer I don't know how to say it exactly, the more you realize this, the more you try to keep your frequency at a calm level and be at peace or at one with nature. It's very rewarding. It is just so rewarding. I really don't know how else to express it other than that, but it really is rewarding. And it's it was really funny. One day I fell in the garden. Well, it's not like before, before I broke my leg when I fell, I couldn't get up. But now, I can get up because I've practiced since I broke my leg and it healed and all that kind of stuff. Well, anyway, I fell. I don't know. I tripped over my own feet. But anyway, I fell down. And while I knew I could get up, so that wasn't a problem. But I said to myself, why don't you just stay down here and enjoy yourself for a while and look up at the sky like when you were a kid? And that's exactly what I did. I just put my hands back like this and looked up at the sky. Oh, it was so wonderful. I could have stayed there for a long time, but it was great. Bill used to kid me because when we were over at the other place, I used to take a nap outside in the garden. And Bill would say, Theresa, one day you're going to wake up and you're going to have something beside you that you're not going to want beside you, like a snake or something like that. But I just always thought the garden was the nicest place to take a nap. I just thought it was wonderful. So anyway, lots of garden stories. I guess I'm crazy when it comes to the garden, but you really do get into that. If you can be a kid again in a heartbeat when you're in the garden. And I'm very good at being a kid again.
I think we all need to be a kid again a little bit in order to, change things in the world.
Yeah.
Turn things around.
I think when we started this interview, you wanted to probably hear a kid story. You want to hear a kid story in the garden?
Yes, please.
Okay. Kids are wonderful in the garden. They're magic. They really are magic. And I think the whole thing that you have to learn, first of all, those kids will learn more from you in a garden than almost any other place. And second of all, if you want them to love gardening all their life, you need to make it fun for them. And you can easily do that in a garden. Timothy, the one that I was telling you, the little boy who lived next door to me that was, you could hold in the palm of your hands. And then as he was in diapers and toddling and he was in my garden, well, he was always in my garden. But there were certain things he could do and certain things he couldn't do. Well, as he got older, like he was 5 or 6 years old, he would want to play or do something or dig a hole, And so we were right in the middle of the garden. My garden has paths in it. And I would say, well, here's a shovel. You can dig all the way to China as long as you fill it back in, And so I would let him dig this hole. Oh, he thought he was digging to the other side of the world, But a foot was about a foot past all he was good for. But, he just thought that was the biggest thing. So anyway, as he got older, and I guess he was, I don't know, it seems like to me he was 4 years old or somewhere along in there, he wanted to plant a tomato. He wanted a tomato all his own. So I said, okay, we can do that. So I picked out a spot for him that was all the way at the other end of the garden. I didn't put it in, where I was doing major things, but I picked it at a place that he could come and check it and that it would be all right and, all this kind of stuff. Well, he took this little tomato plant and I showed him how to do it. But, kids are still kids and they don't get it. But it doesn't matter because somehow the plants seem to know and plants want to live. So anyway, here's this little boy, still pretty much, he's just 4 years old, they're not but so big and doesn't know but so much. Well, he took this plant. You would have thought he had a piece of gold in his hand. He was so proud of that tomato plant. So he takes it back there and he's digging this hole, like you talking about kids digging. Well, he digs this hole for the plant. Now I said, now be sort of gentle with it, Well, he must not know what gentle was. He dug that hole and he goes, boom, and he put that tomato plant in that hole and he went, and he smacked that thing down, and I couldn't help but laugh. But I thought, but that won't make it. That was the biggest, most beautiful tomato plant you've ever seen, and he was so proud of that plant he didn't know what to do. But his family they were not gardeners. But I understand since he's been grown that he does have a few tomato plants, and I can't help but attribute that whole incident to his having tomato plants now. I don't think otherwise he would know anything about tomato plants. But kids love that kind of stuff. And even though he beat that poor plant to death, it did just fine. It really did. It's sort of amazing that it did, but it really did just fine.
What an amazing story and an encouraging story for everybody out there.
Yeah, you don't have to really be, you need to use good common sense like what we've talked about. You need to pick out a spot where they really can't harm anything, so to give them a certain amount of freedom. You don't want them up by your really great stuff that you really would be concerned if he were walking all over. You want to pick a spot that gives him a child's freedom. Let's put it that way. That's a good way to put it. Gives him a child's freedom to do things. But he checked that tomato plant every single day, every day. And when it got a tomato on it, you would have thought that he was the king of the world. It was just wonderful. And I have to tell you one more story. This is so cute. We were in the garden on the other side because I had gardens everywhere. This was at our first place here. And there was this huge squash plant, absolutely huge. And so Timothy was there with me, and he was only about 3 at this because he still had diapers on. And but I don't know where his sister was because she wasn't there. But anyway, Timothy was there. And so Timothy was following me around as I did garden chores, So we were by this squash, and I got up and I backed up, and all of a sudden we heard this loud squeal, this real loud, high-pitched noise. And I turned around, and I had stepped on a baby rabbit that had evidently the mother had nested in the squash. And all of a sudden I heard thump, 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 thump. And that's how the rabbits, how they'll stomp the ground. Well, there was the mother rabbit. She came. And she was thumping the ground for, about me. But anyway, Timothy, at 3 or 4 years old, he got up and he says, "Oh, Tisa, you stepped on a pig." And then oh, Tisa. He could have been over 3 years old. "Oh, Tisa, you stepped on a pig." And the reason he said that is because these little baby rabbits look just like pigs. They really do. They're real teeny. They don't have a bit of fur on them, They're no fur, but their face really looks that little flat nose and all. They look just like a little pig. And so he thought it was pig. And I tell you, that's one of my best stories. But the reason it's so great is because I can see it in my mind. If you had been there, you would have loved the story because it was, "Oh, Tisa, you stepped on a pig." It was just wonderful. But that's the kind of things that happen when you are in the garden a lot and when you have the kids following you around. And they pretty much do what you tell them to do. They live up to what you expect of them. And I always expected them to behave themselves and to do as I asked. And it's a wonderful teaching experience. It's wonderful. His sister was over one time with her stepsister. And I had this gorgeous pepper that I had picked. And I had put it right outside the garden. And when the two girls had been over there for quite a while. Well, all of a sudden they had to go home in a hurry. And when I went to get my pepper, it was crushed. And they had stepped on it, but had failed to tell me that they stepped on it. Well, I just smile because that is a wonderful opportunity to teach. I mean, that's what that is, an opportunity to teach. I mean, I didn't like it, but it's still an opportunity to teach. So I called them on the phone and I said, can you girls come back over here for a minute? So they came back and I pointed to my pepper and I said, do you know anything about this? And so they said yes. And I said, well, next time anything like this happens, you need to come and tell me that it happened. You don't need to just go home. You need to tell me. But it was an opportunity to teach. It was also an opportunity to let them know I loved them no matter what they did. Because they didn't do it on purpose, obviously. But once they did it, they were in a hurry to go home because they thought I'd be angry. And I wasn't. It was just a good opportunity to teach. So I think that, with kids, I think you have to take all those opportunities. And there's so many that come along. And a garden is the perfect place to do it. Just the perfect place to do it.
Awesome. I do have one more question.
Okay.
Books. Do you have 3 books that you would recommend to anybody watching this interview?
Yes. The one that I spoke of before, Secrets of the Soil, that is wonderful. Hard reading. It's not an easy read, but it's wonderful. And then there's a book, and I can't remember, if you go on my site and if you do a search for the 3 books that will change your life, it'll come right up. But it's by Bernard Jensen, who has since passed away, but he was wonderful. And he talks about healing through food and nature and all that kind, and it will change how you look at things. It's very easy reading, very easy reading. And the third one is my book, Organic Gardening, cutting through the hype. And there's so much hype out there. And there are only 3 basic keys to success. Now, again, I have to stress to people, this doesn't mean you're never going to learn anything else, because then you just stop. You never want to do that. You always want to continually grow and to continually learn. But my book gives you the basis, and it gives you that core that you need to be successful. It also tells you lots of other things about, it just points out why all this is successful and what not to do. And it just really tries to hold your hand, really. Take you by the hand and do it. Now, again, and even at the end of the book, I tell why I feel the reader will be successful. Do you know that statistics say most people never, and this is the great vast majority, never finish reading a book, never ever finish reading it? They'll get it, and then the other part, even people who do, they don't take action on it. Well, you can't get good results if you're going to take that approach. But if you can put these simple things into play, you will be successful. You don't have to be a genius. You don't have to know a whole lot. Nature will work. It's like you're talking about with the kids digging in the earth. Yes, the earth will heal itself. Do you want to mess it up on purpose? No. You want to use a little bit of wisdom, and you want to do enough to give yourself that extra edge, because after a while, everything you do that's going to make you better and better, you got a better garden. So that is only common sense. But the point is that nature will work with you. She really will. And it's just, so that's the 3 books. Now, there are plenty of other books, but those are the 3. Secrets of the Soil is hard reading, but if you only get that book and read the preface to it or the introduction to it, you're going to learn a ton of stuff. You would be amazed. I mean, I got more out of that intro because when I read that book, I was just learning and I didn't know enough to build on. It was a lot of it I dozed right off while I was reading it because it was too complicated for me. But the more you learn and build on it, then it becomes not complicated. But the point being that there's plenty in there that you can understand. If you don't understand it, well, skip it. Go to the part you do understand and wait. The thing is, it's like with my website. Now, I've got more than 800 posts on my website. And I know people think this is strange, but I go back and read my own writing sometimes because we see things differently as we grow and as we develop and as we learn. Every time you learn something and build and build and build on that foundation, then when you go back and read things, you see it in a totally different light and you learn even more. So that's the way with especially like Secrets to the Soil that is hard to read. Now, my book is easy reading. I mean, you can breeze right on through it. So that's one extreme, and Secrets to the Soil is the other. But if you even read the intro to Secrets to the Soil, you're going to learn a lot about what we haven't been told, for the most part, what's been kept a secret and how things work. I mean, nature is amazing. And for my garden, I heard the other day, I was listening to a program and there was an owner of a farm and she's an organic farm and really top of the line. And she too has noticed how the chemtrails are much worse than they've ever been. And she said she has noticed a decline. I was thinking maybe, well, is it just me? Is it because the chemtrails really have been awful this year? Well, it's not just me. It was her too. And she said she has definitely noticed a decline. So the point there is, no, we might not be able as an individual to do anything about the chemtrails, but nature's very, very strong. And I mean, they're trying to poison us and bump us off and all that kind of stuff. But everything that we do to work with nature and to put into play the things that we know will make us successful, we will get crops and we will have something to eat. I mean, I'm not getting what I got 20 years ago, but I feed myself with it. So anyway, the point is you need every little thing that you can get. It's simple to do and it adds to your bounty. There's no reason not to do it, really.
Oh, Theresa, thank you so much. That was a really important point with all the sort of fear feeling out there, the things that we can worry about. Well, it's great to know that, we can fight back to save ourselves in the garden by doing the garden.
I think it's imperative. I think it's imperative in this day and age that we know how to garden. And it's the most valuable thing we can teach our kids because, when things turn around, they turn around for the good. We're sort of in a battle of good and evil. And when things turn around for the good, you are going to be feeding yourself from your garden. And if you teach your kids anything about the garden, it's the best thing you can do for them. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Gino.
Not at all. Not at all. I think I was interrupting you, but thank you so much. And where can people buy this book?
Right off my website, and it's tendingmygarden.com. And if you scroll on there, now I don't know about a cell phone because I don't think it shows. I think you have to just scroll all the way to the bottom for that. But if you go on a laptop, right on the sidebar, if you scroll on the sidebar on the right-hand side, you'll see it. And then you just click on that and you can order it. And I will personally autograph your book and send it to you.
That is awesome. And I can just say that, anyone out there struggling with the garden or thinking to start the garden up, don't take my word for it. Take Theresa's word for it. This is the book. This is the book you need. This is the book you want. Trust me. I know everybody else is telling you what you need and what you want, but if you've got an open mind and you're having a bit of a challenge with the garden, or you're thinking of starting one up, go here, please. You're welcome.
Especially if you're thinking of starting. I mean, that'd be wonderful to be able to start fresh the easy way, rather than to have to go through all the complicated stuff.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, we'll leave it there, and I'd just like to say, Theresa, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me, and thank you to everyone else. Yeah.
Thank you, Gino, for having me. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope I didn't overwhelm everybody. I could go on forever talking about the garden,
No, I think we only scratched the surface, so we will get you back, and I'll muster up some kind of focus to do with the gardening, because I definitely want to hear more, and I think it's really important to hear about your experience and about the magic of the garden. So thanks so much, Theresa.
Thank you, Gino.